In 1975, a young engineer at Kodak named Steven Sasson created something unusual. It was big. It was slow. It looked nothing like a modern camera. But it had one revolutionary feature, so I didn't use film. It captured images digitally. No negatives, no printing, no chemicals, just data. The first digital photo ever taken came from Kodak. Let that sink in. The company that would later be destroyed by digital photography was the one that invented it. Imagine inventing the future, holding it in your hands, and then choosing to ignore it. Not because it didn't work, but because it worked too well. This is the story of a company that created the digital camera and then buried it. A decision so costly, it erased over $50 billion in value and destroyed one of the most powerful brands in the world. This is the rise and fall of Eastman Kodak Company. In the late 20th century, Kodak wasn't just successful, it was untouchable. Founded by George Eastman, the company revolutionized photography with a simple idea. You press the button, we do the rest. And people loved it. By the 1990s, Kodak controlled nearly 80 to 90% of the global film market. Think about that for a second. Almost every photo taken anywhere in the world ran through Kodak. Vacations, weddings, birthdays, history itself. Kodak wasn't just a brand. It was a monopoly on memories. Their business model was brilliant. Sell cheap cameras, make massive profit from film and photo development. Every picture you took meant more money for Kodak. And the best part, customers had no alternative. Kodak had built a system so powerful, it looked impossible to break. But behind the scenes, something unexpected happened. When Sasson presented his invention to Kodak executives, they didn't celebrate. They panicked, because they immediately understood the implications. If digital photography succeeded, film would die. And if film died, Kodak's entire business model would collapse. So instead of asking, how do we lead this future? They asked, how do we protect the present? And that's where everything went wrong. Kodak made a quiet but devastating decision. Delay the technology, hide its potential, keep selling film. It wasn't stupidity. It was fear. Fear of losing billions, fear of disrupting their own success. So they convinced themselves, digital isn't ready yet. People will always need film. We still have time. But in reality, time was the one thing they didn't have. While Kodak was protecting its past, the rest of the world was building the future. Companies like Sony, Canon Inc., and Nikon Corporation saw the opportunity. They didn't hesitate. They invested heavily in digital cameras. They improved the technology, made it smaller, faster, cheaper. And slowly, consumers began to shift. At first, digital photos were low quality, but they had one huge advantage: convenience. No film, no waiting, instant results. And once that convenience improved, there was no going back. Film didn't decline overnight, but year after year, it started to fade. And with it, Kodak's power began to disappear. By the early 2000s, the damage was irreversible. Kodak tried to catch up. They launched digital cameras. They entered new markets, but it was too late. They weren't leading anymore. They were chasing. Revenue dropped. Profits collapsed. Layoffs increased. And in 2012, after more than a century of dominance, Kodak filed for bankruptcy. A company that once defined an entire industry was reduced to a warning story, all because of one decision. They chose to protect what they had, instead of building what was coming. This phenomenon has a name. It's called the innovator's dilemma. When companies become too successful, they become prisoners of their own success. They optimize for what works today and ignore what could replace it tomorrow, because change feels dangerous. But here's the truth. What feels safe is often the biggest risk. Kodak didn't fail because they lacked innovation. They failed because they were afraid of it. Kodak had the future in their hands, and they let it slip away. So the next time you hesitate to change, remember this story. Because in business, and in life, the biggest mistake is waiting too long. But here's what makes this story even more shocking. Kodak didn't just miss the future once. They missed it twice. In the early 2000s, Kodak actually had another opportunity to win. They already had the technology, the trust of millions, and this time, the world was finally ready for digital. Kodak even started selling digital cameras. For a moment, it looked like they might recover. But there was one problem. They still didn't understand the new game. Then came the moment that sealed everything. The smartphone. When iPhone launched in 2007, everything changed. Suddenly, everyone had a camera in their pocket. No need to buy a separate device. No need for film. No need for printing. Just take a photo and share it instantly. And just like that, Kodak's remaining business disappeared. Not slowly, but completely. Kodak's story isn't just about business. It's about how peoples and companies react to change. Because this doesn't just happen to corporations. It happens to everyone. We hold on to what works, even when we know it won't last. We delay change because it feels uncomfortable. But the truth is simple. The world doesn't wait. Technology doesn't wait. The future doesn't wait. Kodak had multiple chances to lead that future. And every time, they chose to look back instead of forward. So here's the real lesson. If you don't disrupt yourself, someone else will. And when they do, it's already too late. But Kodak's biggest mistake wasn't just ignoring innovation. It was believing they were still in control. For decades, they dictated the rules of photography. They decided how photos were taken and how people experienced memories. That kind of power creates something dangerous, an illusion. An illusion that no matter what happens, you'll always have time to adapt. But markets don't work like that. Technology doesn't move slowly. It moves in waves. And if you miss one wave, the next one doesn't wait for you. Kodak became a victim of its own success because success creates comfort, and comfort kills urgency. Inside the company, everything still looked fine for a long time. Revenue was still coming in. Customers were still buying film. Profits were still strong. So internally, there was no pressure to change. And that's the trap. When everything looks okay, you don't realize you're already falling behind. By the time the decline becomes visible, it's already too late to fix it. Imagine a different version of this story. A version where Kodak made a different decision. Instead of protecting film, they fully embraced digital. They could have dominated digital cameras, built early photo-sharing platforms, created their own ecosystem before anyone else. Think about it. Kodak had the technology, the global reach. They could have become what Instagram is today, or even bigger. But that future required one thing, letting go of the past. And Kodak wasn't ready to do that. And here's the most important part of this story. It's not unique. This pattern repeats again and again. Companies rise, dominate their industry, and then disappear because they all make the same mistake. They optimize for today instead of preparing for tomorrow. You've seen it before, and you'll see it again. Because the hardest decision in business is choosing to destroy your own success before someone else does it for you. And this isn't just about billion-dollar companies. It's about decisions. Your decisions. Because the same mindset exists in everyday life. Staying in a comfortable routine. Avoiding change. Waiting for the right time. But the truth is, there is no perfect time. There's only early or too late. Kodak waited. And that wait cost them everything. Kodak had the future in their hands. Not once, but multiple times. And each time, they chose safety over change, control over risk, the present over the future. And in the end, that choice defined their legacy. Not as the company that built photography, but as the company that refused to evolve. Because in a world that never stops changing, standing still is the fastest way to disappear.